Welcome to the show, everyone. We are here for another fantastic week of podcasting. And this week, we have a special interview with our very own Brian Grimm.
Maybe you've heard of him.
Maybe. He's kind of a big deal around these parts.
Especially in this room.
Especially in this room.
Yeah.
Brian, why are we here?
We are here today to find out what happens if you flush your toilet.
And how do you have a special connection to what goes down the drain?
Because your shit comes across my desk every day.
Is that figuratively or literally?
That is quite literally. Well, it's not a desk, I suppose. But no, I got a new job at the city of Clarkston Wastewater
Congratulations, of course.
Treatment Plant. Thank you very much. Yeah, I got a new job. It's pretty cool. I don't know. What do you think if someone says, "Hey, I work at a wastewater treatment plant"? What are your first thoughts?
Well, I suppose I always think about externalities of production. So, I always think about the paper mill or the bullet factories. You know, that's kind of what my mind goes to. But in this case, we're talking about doo-doo. Mm-hmm. And also, you guessed it, pee-pee.
Yeah.
And now, other things.
Drew, there is a similarity in our jobs.
Okay.
Yeah. We both deal with brown trout.
Okay.
Yeah. Fly fish joke.
Ba-doom.
Yeah. I'll cut that out. Yeah. No, I do. So, yes, your thoughts. What would you think it'd be like to work where I work?
I don't really know. I don't know sort of anything about it. But luckily for us, you're going to illuminate us on exactly what goes into that. I guess I would just imagine there's a large series of tubes and filters and basins and places to spit out things.
You're not wrong. I think that about wraps it up, I suppose. No, you're not wrong. I would just like to say, and maybe this didn't come across your mind, which is good. I assume people think it smells really bad. Mm-hmm. And while it can smell really bad, and while I have smelled really rotten smells, it's usually when something goes wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So if everything's working correctly, it really doesn't smell bad. It doesn't smell, like roses or your other favorite flower, but it doesn't smell too bad most of the time.
Okay.
And very rarely do I have to touch stuff with poop on it.
Right.
It happens.
Which is nice.
It happens. We have gloves.
Mm-hmm. Hazmat suits. Body condoms.
Speaking of condoms, everybody, I'm so glad you all are safe. But they don't go down the toilet. Throw them in your garbage. Yeah. Because if you don't, we end up having to take them to the dump ourselves.
Or you might find that one of those condoms fills up with water and busts a line, and then you got to go fix it. Shout out to my cousin. That happened to him.
Oh, in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, once it makes it to the sewer line, that'd have to be like a heavy-duty condom. No, so I suppose that takes us to the first step in the treatment process.
Yeah, walk us through it. So
everything goes down into the sewer.
Everything's leaving my house. It's going to the sewer.
That's what happens.
Now where's it going?
All right, so in Clarkston, most everything is gravity fed. So the treatment plant is at the very end of 13th Street. All right, it's at a very low point, right by the port.
The shit runs down the hill.
You know what? That is a true statement. A lot of it is gravity fed. And, so everything that's coming down is anything coming down your kitchen sink drains. Basically, I guess everything that comes in your bath
water. It's just any and all gray water.
Yeah. And black water, too, I suppose.
And black water.
Oh, black water, keep on rolling. So, yeah, everything mostly runs downhill. There are a couple areas. There's 2 areas that actually have what are called lift stations. Mm-hmm. So if you live... one of them's down around 7th Street in Clarkston, and if you kind of live down a little hill, your water needs to get pumped up to where it can be gravity fed. And so there's little pumps that sit there, and they fill up, and there's level sensors, and it turns the pumps on and off, and it pumps the water up, and then it flows all the way downhill. So it goes down your drain into our sewer system. And that's really cool because part of the job is the sewer system will get plugged up with roots sometimes. And so we got to go through and cut those roots.
Mm-hmm.
We get to take this really cool camera. It's like a little car. It's got 4 wheels. And it's a camera, and on the front it's got a big light, and it rotates. And one of the things we use the camera for is to go through and look at roots and find them. Like if we've got a blockage somewhere, and we can then go through with another truck, and it's got a big cutting mechanism on the end and cuts those roots.
So once you find a root restriction with that little vehicle, does it stay kind of nearby so you can continue to view what you're cutting once you get to the root restriction?
No, because it'd be hard to get 2 things down there. So
right.
if you the sewer system, I think it's like 8-inch pipes.
So are you just
They're
kind of
not very big in diameter.
You're just getting to the root restriction with the other tool, and then you just kind of guess like this is where I'm at, and then start running it to get that blockage out.
And it's more of a guess because it counts the feet. So you've got the series of manholes in the roads, and we know the distance from each manhole to the next, and it's got a little counter mechanism. So while you're videoing it, you have a joystick, you have a computer and a joystick, and you're literally it's like a computer game driving the pipes.
That sounds like a good idea for a new Instagram account.
I've actually, I've thought about it. I'm thinking about asking my boss if I can start one for the treatment plant. So another thing we'd use is let's see. One of the trucks, it's a big water truck. It can be used as a vacuum truck, and it also pushes water out. So it's got giant tanks on it. It's got this big old hose reel on the front.
And that's for the event of a blockage.
That is for the event of a blockage, and more so, what we use it more for is it has a water nozzle on the end, which shoots out like 40 gallons, 50 gallons a minute.
Wow.
And it's got some on the back that'll propel it forward, and it's got a spinning nozzle on the front that cleans the lines. So it's called hydro flushing. And so that we have a guy that's our main hydro flusher guy, and he takes it out almost every day throughout the year, and he goes and he cleans all the sewer pipes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we keep them clean, we keep everything flowing, and that's where we'll notice the problems. Either he can't get that hydro flusher thing through the nozzle on the front, or he'll look down a manhole because you got to lift up the manholes to do it, and there'll be a bunch of rocks, and we know that there's a problem somewhere, and then we'll bring the camera out and go try to find that problem.
Gotcha.
Right.
So, under normal circumstances, there's no root restrictions. I'm evacuating and leaving behind from my home. Where does it go? It goes into the sewer, and now it's headed down 13th, and it ends up at
the treatment plant in a place what we call the headworks. So this is your primary treatment. This is the first thing that happens. It's the headworks. It's the influent of the plant is another way to put it. And we get all of City of Clarkston's flow, and we also get PUD's flow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so PUD does everything like in the heights, and they'll take care of all those sewer lines and keep everything running correctly, and then it all comes in to the headworks, we call them.
So is there like a certain metric for how much comes in on average per day?
Oh,
yeah. Have any of that kind
780,000 gallons a day.
Wow.
That's a very small plant.
I'm not good at math, but that's a lot per year.
Yeah, each and every day. I mean, it ranges between maybe on the low end 76 or 760, and we'll go all the way up to maybe 820,000.
Wow.
So it varies between there, but pretty much every day you'll see about 780,000.
Yeah, that's wild.
760, something like that.
That's a lot of
it's a lot of water. It's a lot of poop.
It is.
Another PSA: flushable wipes are not flushable. And I'll tell you how in a minute. But we take them out, we separate them from everything else. It gets compacted, and we take it to the dump. They don't decompose. We get a lot of cigarette butts. We get a lot of condoms. We get a lot of flushable wipes.
Q-tips?
Yeah, some Q-tips. A lot of tampons. Don't flush your tampons. We get a lot of those too. Now, and I don't ever have to touch these things. Or it'd be very rare that I have to touch these things because we have this really cool thing called it's called a bar screen. And this bar screen has these lamels. So it's probably 2 feet wide, and it's probably got, I want to say 20 to 30. It's just these thin metal kind of
It's a big colander for the poop.
Pretty much, but it's these thin metal hooks, and they sit in between each other, and one set stays stationary, and the other set rotates up. And so it'll kind of lift it to the next, and it just lifts everything up and up and up and up, and it finally drops down into a trough. So the other day, actually, I took one of the panels off to see if it needed cleaned. It was very clean. I just cleaned it in September, I think. And that's kind of gross because you take a pressure washer out there and you spray it off with a pressure washer, and I wore coveralls and a face mask screen kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, it was. That's not one of the better jobs, but it's only something that has to be done
every so often.
So it's not something you do every day.
So is that the next phase that we're going to reach? Is it going to go kind of to that area after it reaches that first initial stage?
Well, that is the first initial stage.
Oh, that's just a component of okay.
Yeah, that's totally it. So it goes all the way up these things, and you open up the back, and you see turds, and you see condoms and tampons and cigarette butts and all this other stuff.
Chew pouches,
probably. And I found a Hot Wheel car in there one time. That was kind of cool.
Nice.
Didn't keep it. Crossed my mind, but I didn't keep it. So once it goes up, it dumps out into this trough. It's got this big screw, and it pushes it all towards this long tube that goes up and has a chute at the end of it, and it falls into a dumpster. So what's cool is, like I said, there's turds in it, but your turds are the food for the bacteria that end up eating and breaking everything down later, and we'll get to that. So what happens is, as it's going through the screw press and getting ready to go through the chute, you've got water coming in, and it'll dissolve all the turds, and we'll call them organic matter from now on. It sprays off all the organic matter, and it separates that from mostly flushable wipes and all the other stuff that I've mentioned.
So what do you do?
The plugs that fall out of that thing, they're really clean. They're not poopy. They're really clean. And then those all fall into a dumpster, and we'll take that to the dump usually once a week.
So that's all the stuff that's not organic. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, all the non-organic matter, cigarette butts, etc.
Okay, so that's phase one. Now where do we go?
So anything that makes it through the bar screen, mostly liquid, it's going to go through the bar screens, and it goes to these pumps. And then this includes all the organic matter that's washed down on that trough. It all goes down to these pumps, and then it goes over to something called a grit classifier. And this is kind of cool, too. So it all gets pumped up to the top of this thing, and it's this big cyclone. You can't really see it because it's surrounded in a concrete housing, but it's this big cyclone-looking thing, cone. The cyclone part comes from, it's got paddles in it that spins the water and makes a cyclone. And what that does is it drops all the heavy stuff, any pebbles or sand, a lot of corn and peas. A lot of corn and peas. It takes those all to the bottom. Those all go to another pump, which puts it in another dumpster, which we also take to the dump when we do our dump run. So that gets rid of a lot of the sand and rocks and other stuff that can do harm to pumps and things down the road. So after it goes through the grit classifier, gets all your grit out and your corn and peas, it goes through one tank called an anoxic zone. And so this is a big series of, they're called a big series of basins. It's a big rectangle. It's got 4 square sections, and there's a dividing line down the middle, and each side's got 4 square sections. And as it's flowing through there, what we're doing is getting rid of, we're changing nitrates and nitrites. There's a special bacteria in there that changes those to nitrogen gas. And so that is a nitrate and nitrite removal step. It goes from there to what's called an aeration basin. So there's no air added. The bacteria that do this like very low dissolved oxygen concentrations. And so there's just mixers on the bottom that keep everything well mixed.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a quick break to tell you about our new Patreon account.
That's right, OSP fans, you can now directly help us fund this show and get access to exclusive content.
For more information and to learn how you can support the show, head to patreon.com/oldspiralpodcast.
Now back to the show.
Where it goes from there to the aeration basin, and there we do have air diffusers. So we've got tons of air blowing through, and it bubbles up, and that's what keeps it mixed in those basins, because the bacteria there, they nitrify.
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking the ammonia from your pee and whatever else, and they're turning that into nitrates and nitrites. And if you're paying attention, you'll say, wait a minute, why do you have it going from nitrates and nitrites to nitrogen gas, and then from ammonia to nitrates and nitrites? And the reason is there's another pump that puts about 30% of what's coming out of there back into the anoxic zone. So it's kind of like a little circle. And so that's where it's kind of a circle, and you'll get rid of a lot of you go from ammonia, nitrates, to nitrogen gas using that whole mixture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what is happening to all of the water that we flush in this case that ends up in the sewer?
So we're keeping it.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through the system. So
that water is used to kind of move things along as well in the process?
Absolutely.
Does it get recirculated?
Some of it gets recirculated. Like I said, that one step where it's pushing 30% of what's leaving the aeration basin back to the anoxic zone, there's a little recirculation process there. And the rest of it that comes out of that anoxic zone. So the anoxic zone, you have a bacteria in there. They're taking the food that they get from the organic matter, and they're using that to grow, reproduce, eat. So that's the first stage of your poop getting eaten.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting turned into it's bacteria food. So the bacteria eat and grow and die and reproduce and grow and die, and it's just all through there.
Gotcha.
Same thing with the aeration basin, which is where most of it happens, and that's another couple types of bacteria in there working and eating and breaking down all that organic matter.
So are these the same types of bacteria that you would find in like an outhouse that you add wood chips to and that kind of thing?
Yeah, they are going to be fairly similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that something you guys have to replenish often, or does it kind of always keep its own healthy population?
It keeps it going. Your food, or the food it gets, your waste is its
Your
food.
organic matter.
Your organic matter, yeah, it's kind of self-sustaining.
Okay.
As long as it gets food, it can reproduce.
Okay.
And then we're getting lots of bugs going on. And
so we're pretty filtered down at this point. They've kind of gone through select sizes of different organic matter that's left. Now what?
Well, if you go to that aeration basin, which we do, and you take a sample out of it, and we have this big, it's like a 1 liter, like a cylinder lab equipment. It has gradations all the way up. And you take that back to the lab. What we'll do is we'll kind of stir it up, and you'll see how fast all those solids settle to the bottom. So it's kind of this brown soupy mess. And then you'll see in the lab that it'll settle out pretty good, and you'll have a somewhat clear section on the top and all your solids at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes from the aeration basin to 2 clarifiers is what they're called. And basically those are giant. I think I might have shown you a picture of it once. They're about 18 feet deep and 60 feet across.
Right.
And so from there, all the solids start settling to the bottom, and all the liquids, as they come in, they flow off the top, and those go to be filtered or sanitized with UV sanitation and then out into the river. Mm-hmm. And all the solids float into the bottom. Those are removed with other pumps, and they go to our sludge holding tanks for further processing on those.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So is that kind of the final step, or is there still more afterwards?
That's almost the final. So it's the final step for the liquids.
Okay.
So all the liquids come off the top. It's fairly clean at that point. I mean, it's still full of bacteria and fecal coliforms and stuff like that. So all the liquids will flow through. We've got these 2 trains of UV sanitizers. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, there's this ballast which holds, I want to say like 6 or so UV lights, and each ballast has 3, and it runs them through 2 sections, and each section's got 2 of those. Mm-hmm. So it goes through these UV lights, and it just kills all the stuff, keeps them from reproducing. So we'll take samples of our effluent at this point, what's going to the river, and we'll run and tests on it to see how much bacteria is still in there to meet limits that we have on how much, fecal matter we can still run into the river. And
which I would wager is a really, really, really small number, right?
It is, and even though it's a small number, I think we're like 6 times below our limit generally. So we do a really good job of putting clean water back into the river.
Right, because you said, I think in conversations we've had before privately, that the water that comes out is cleaner than the water that hits the river, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could you drink it? You probably wouldn't want to drink it.
You could drink it. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, there's some, not a lot.
Might have a little twang.
Yeah. There's a little bit of algae and stuff that grows in there, and there's little worms called nematodes that they're just kind of everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, little shelled creatures that are about the size of the head of a pin and stuff. So if you got it and you looked at it, I mean, if you drank it, you'd probably be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just wouldn't recommend it.
Sure.
Yeah. But it is clean. It's very clean. We do a really good job. So that's it for the liquids part. So like you were saying, what happens to all the liquids? Well, they end up going into the river.
Okay.
Yeah. So as far as the solids, though, there's a whole nother step. So after all the solids settle to the bottom of this clarifier, they're pumped out into another tank, and it holds on to those until we're ready to dewater it, is kind of what it's called. So the first step in our dewatering process is it goes through this big gravity belt thickener. And I know I've shown you a picture of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this big conveyor belt with some kind of sections on the top that will break it up and kind of smush it. And it goes over this conveyor belt, and we inject a polymer into where it goes to the front of the belt, and it helps everything stick together and release more water. And so by the time it gets out of that, it's probably 4% solids, which is a lot thicker. It looks like mud. You'd make really good mud pies with it. That's kind of the consistency of that. Really good mud pies. So then all the water that comes out of that step, it just goes back to the head of the plant, and it goes through the whole system again.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then those solids are moved over to another section of a solids holding tank. And then the last step for the solids is it goes through something called a screw press. And we have 2 of them, and they're really big. It's got another screw mechanism in it, and it compacts it as it goes through, because the screws get smaller and smaller, or closer together, I mean. And as it does this, it kind of comes out like a colander type thing, and not a lot actually comes out of it, but a lot of the liquids do. And then from there, it's probably 16 to 18% solids, which are like a pretty solid cow pie. Yeah.
Okay.
Like pretty solid cow pie. Maybe a little bit more dry than that.
A lot of pies.
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm at work, all I think about is food. So at that point, it flows through and it goes up a conveyor belt, and it drops into a big dump truck, and we take it to Clearwater.
No pun intended.
Yeah, dump truck. Wow. And we'll take it to Clearwater composting. And again, all the water that comes out of that goes to the back of the head of the plant.
Okay. And I was really thrown for a loop by what you're about to say next, because I never would have expected where that poop goes finally.
Yeah, it goes to Clearwater composting. There are regulations in place for composting waste. We take it there. Lewiston takes theirs there. And when we go, they put out a pad of fairly well composted stuff, and then a lot of what looks like grass clippings down, and then we'll dump on top of that, and it all gets mixed in and put in piles. Now, these piles have to reach a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. I want to say it's like 180 degrees. I could be wrong on that. And it's got to stay at that temperature and kill the rest of those harmful microbes. And it gets turned into usually agricultural fertilizer.
Right. Yeah, and I was just really surprised to learn that. I purchased some of said fertilizer, and laid it down on my yard when I was putting in grass seed, and was horrified to learn that
now I
that's
don't
what that
know
was made of, because I walked around barefoot many times.
Now I don't know if that compost is the same. It did have some of our solids in it. Biosolids is what they call it at that point.
I did not examine it closely enough to see any biosolids.
Well, you wouldn't. It's just black at that point. It just looks like black, mud or dirt.
I mean, it was just composty looking, and I just assumed. I always assumed that it was just, like you said, yard clippings, leaves, dead organic matter, not from people but from plants rather. So that is interesting that is one mode of its use, is it goes there.
Yeah, and again, I think there's different classes of compost. I don't think they could sell that to you and say, like, put it in your vegetable
food
garden.
grade or whatever,
right?
To grow your garden, like you said. Yeah,
exactly.
But my grass is green.
That's good. Thanks, everybody. Works real well. And it is kind of a weird thing to think about. But what else are you going to do with it?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and it works super well.
So everything that doesn't end up as compost, is it just taken to the dump at that point?
Oh no, they take all of it.
It's all turned into compost.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. They probably use that to make one type of compost, and then use yard clippings and everything to make another type.
Gotcha. And also, I know that this is kind of
the circle of life, Drew. It's the circle of life.
Pre and post consumption.
That's right.
And I know that this is kind of a different time that we're in, of course, but generally speaking, people can go down and take a tour of your facility, right?
That's right. And it's your right as a community member you can just call the plant and say, I want to come take a tour. And we'll say, yeah, you can come on down and take a tour.
So you heard it here, folks. Brian sends you a special invite to go take a tour with him of this facility. Hopefully soon we can all do that safely.
Right.
But that may be on down the road yet. Wow. Well, I never would have guessed some of these processes, and I want to go check it out in person at some point. But pretty cool. Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, it doesn't basically where it comes in at the headworks, it smells. I've been in way worse smelling outhouses for sure. But after that, the anoxic zone has kind of a funk to it, but it wouldn't make you gag or anything. And it's not strong. It's just kind of unique. And then again, the aeration basin.
Earthy.
Yeah. But once that stuff goes down the clarifier and goes into those sludge holding tanks, it really doesn't smell that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's kind of musty.
Yeah.
A little musty.
Right.
When you're running the gravity belt thickener and everything's kind of aerosolized a little bit. Again, it doesn't smell like poop. It just smells, like I said, a bit musty.
It's got its own unique thing going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's crazy to me is that there's 6 of us that work there. And before me and another guy just got hired, there were 4 people down there. Managing everything. I mean, their problems do arise, and when they do, we got to fix them, like, immediately. Some problems aren't as crucial as others. There's certain places in the plant that I maybe haven't have mentioned that you need to fix them because they're crucial. Every part's crucial, but some are more time sensitive than others. Sure. But yeah, 4 people. I mean, and on the weekend, 2 people come in Saturday and Sunday, but it's only for like 2 hours. And there's just a little bit of, just a few things that have to be done every day. But the plant kind of runs itself. I mean, it runs itself because we've set it up to be able to do that. But if no one showed up for 3 days, everything would probably be fine when we came back.
Right.
Yeah.
But of course, you guys got to be there to monitor everything, make sure everything's not breaking down or jammed up or...
Yeah, because every once in a while a fuse will go out on one of the pump control switches and just things pop up. Basically every day something will pop up. There's days that go by where everything's fine, but it doesn't take a huge crew, and a lot of that's because it is small. I know 780,000 gallons sounds like a lot, and it is, but I mean it's a pretty small plant,
right?
In comparison
in
to
the scope of things. If you're talking about like a major city,
right? Yeah. I think Lewiston, they have night shifts. I mean, our schedule for everybody is 6:30 to 2 or 6 to 2:30 every day, Monday through Friday, and we get to go home. But I think in Lewiston, they have night shift people and stuff like that. It's bigger. They have more to process, more equipment, and everything like that. But it's really neat. I like the people I work with. I'm learning a ton every day. There's always more to learn. What happens in the anoxic zone and the aeration basin, and how much air it's getting, and all the parameters that go along with it. I mean, you could work there for years and still learn new things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And that's been really fun for me to get that opportunity to learn just exactly what goes on in digesting the organic matter.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure we could probably do a follow-up episode on this at some point in the future too, and discuss kind of some more areas of the plant. But thanks for coming in and talking about this on our own show here. It was exciting to learn about all this stuff.
Heck yeah, and I hope that was a pretty good idea of gives you a pretty good idea of what happens when you flush the toilet. And again, flushable wipes are not flushable. Throw your condoms and tampons in the garbage can. But yeah, we've had people come in from other plants and doing tours and stuff, and they're always amazed at how clean our stuff is.
That's good.
And it just makes us feel good. And
sure,
like I said, we're well below all our permit levels, and I think it's a great place to work and get experience, and I don't have to get my hands too dirty too often.
Right.
But it does happen. I had to clean those screw presses like 2 weeks ago, and that was not fun.
Suit up.
Yeah, I did. I put my coveralls on and got to work.
Oh, yeah. Boy. Well, I suppose this is going to be our last episode before Thanksgiving, right?
Before Thanksgiving, yeah. That's right. So, Drew, what are you thankful for this Thanksgiving?
A lot of stuff, actually. I'm thankful to be healthy. Thankful my family's healthy and my friends. Thankful for my job and that I got a roof over my head, especially when so many people don't right now. Thankful for those people that are still hopeful for the future and not concerned with conspiracy theories and thinking that the world is falling on its ear, because it's not. We're all going to be here tomorrow. We're all going to work through this together. And by this, I mean so many things, but you guys all know what I mean. And thankful for our listeners.
Yes, I am 100% thankful for each and every one of our listeners. I'm thankful for our Patreon subscribers. This is something cool. We're going to have to renew our podcast membership on Podbean. That's who we go through. And this year, I'm happy to say the Patreon subscribers will have paid for that subscription.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right
so
on.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That next year it won't cost us anything to put this podcast on the airwaves.
Must be doing something right.
I know. So we're breaking even on that front, which is super cool. So thanks everybody. I'm super thankful for my family. I think it's cool that I have a family. Caitlin is expecting a little girl in January, and we are very excited. And yeah, I'm thankful I have that job and everything that comes with it. Yeah, to have everybody out there, I want you to have a nice Thanksgiving. It'll be smaller than in years previous. It's different, but like Drew said, we're all gonna make it through this. We're some people are having a real hard time at it, but I mean, it's gonna get better. It's got to get better. It's got to get better.
100%.
So hang in there and have a happy and healthy and fun Thanksgiving. And we'll come at you very soon. Thanks again, everybody.
Bye, everyone.